So you're ready to tackle 13.1 miles. Let's talk about how to approach your first half marathon. Hello fellow geeks and welcome back to Running Geek Girl. My name is Heather and I'm glad you're here today because I want to talk to you about how to approach your first half marathon. Now this is going to be a huge accomplishment for you because 13.1 miles, that is a big deal, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You may be a little bit overwhelmed or intimidated or maybe just excited right now, but I'm going to walk you through how you need to get started approaching your training for your first half marathon. First of all, if this is your first video here, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below so that you don't miss any of the running content that I have coming out all the time. Now that you've done that, let's talk about the half marathon. The key to training for your first half marathon is to make sure that you have adequate amount of training without overdoing it. You don't want to go to that start line too undertrained, and you also don't want to go injured. So it's going to be a little bit of a balancing act for a while. Hopefully at this point in your running career, you have at least tackled a 5 or 10K. If not, and you're just going to go for the half marathon straight off the bat, then keep in mind that you're going to have to train a little bit longer to make sure that you have a solid enough base that 13.1 miles is not going to break you. Now, finding a good training balance for a half marathon is a little bit hard sometimes. There are some people who commit just too much to a training plan to the point where they will push themselves through even to the point of being injured. And then there are some people who just don't commit enough to a training plan, thinking that they should just be able to get by, and they show up vastly unprepared for covering that distance. So we're going to talk about how to find a good balance that works for you and your schedule. Now, as I mentioned before you start, you should be able to comfortably run a 5K before you start to tackle longer distances like the half marathon. If you are not prepared for a 5K at this point, then work on some run walks. Look at perhaps the Galloway method, or just walking whenever it feels comfortable for you, for at least 30 minutes, at least 3 times a week. You don't have to go fast, you just need to make sure that you can be on your feet that long. When you're choosing which half marathon you want to do, you need to make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to train. Now, most people will look for one that is at least 2 months in the future, but ideally you'll want one that's 3 or 4 months down the road so that you can have adequate time to prepare, especially if you are not able to run a 5K yet, and to give yourself a little bit of a buffer in case of injury, unexpected travel, and so on. So once you've chosen which half marathon you're going to do, now it is time to check a training plan. I'm going to put a link up here and down in the description to where I have done a video talking about using online training plans and trying to find one that can work for you. I've also done quite a few reviews of several online training plans that are out there for free if you would like to take a look at those and see the pros and cons of each style of training plan. Whatever training plan you choose needs to have at least these 4 things: cross training, a long run where the longest run is at least 10 miles, taper, and rest days. The cross training is important because it's able to keep you in shape without resorting to just running and nothing but running. It's ways to keep your body in a level of fitness ready to tackle the distance without having to pound the concrete every single day. Your long run is usually done at the end of every week. Your longest one needs to be at least 10 miles. Why 10 and not 13.1? Because first of all, you don't want to overtrain and overstress yourself, and second of all, if you can do 10 miles, then realistically, you can add on those extra 3.1 miles to get to the finish line. It's just about getting over that hurdle of 10 miles, and the rest you can do. Rest days need to be included in your plan because these are crucial for recovery. You're going to be pushing your body in a way that you probably have not pushed before, and you need to have time off to allow your body to recuperate, to rebuild, and to get ready for the next week of training. And finally, a taper really needs to be included because you don't need to be running all the way up to race day. You need to be able to pull back slightly without cutting running off completely in the last 2 or so weeks before your race day. let's talk about avoiding injury, which is going to be a huge part of any type of a training plan, but especially one that tackles a distance such as this one. The important thing is to be able to listen to your body. If there is something on your body that is hurting, not uncomfortable, because discomfort is going to be part of training, but if there is actual pain, you need to pay attention to that. Give your body some rest, and if it's still not letting up, then make sure that you check with your doctor to make sure that nothing more serious is going on. It's going to be a lot more important to take a short amount of time to rest and recover from a smaller injury than to keep pushing through and make the injury worse and end up being sidelined for several weeks, or worse, missing the race completely because you just can't go on. The biggest part of your training is going to be tackling your long runs. In fact, all of the exercises that you do throughout the week, the cross training, the speed drills, the tempo runs, and so on, are all leading up to you being able to complete your long run every week. Now, this may seem like a lot of pressure to put on just one run, but you actually need to approach your long run in a nice and controlled pace. You're going to want to practice the kind of pacing that you want to do on race day. And that's going to be completely different than if you're running a 5K. A 5K, you're trying to push the speed as fast as you can because it's over a short distance, 3.1 miles, as opposed to 13.1 miles for a half marathon. You're going to want to slow down and leave some gas in the tank for the end of the race. Most runners are going to approach a half marathon at about 3 to 4 minutes slower per mile than they will their 5K pace. So again, that's just a quick rule of thumb. It's going to vary from runner to runner as to what feels the most comfortable for them. Some people will use a run-walk strategy and some people will do a straight run. Again, it's going to depend on what is in your training plan and what is going to work for you and your particular running style. Let's talk quickly about what gear, if any, you're going to need. Well, obviously, the most important thing you're going to need is a good pair of running shoes. Now, whereas you could, when you first start running, get away with pretty much any shoe as long as it kind of gives you enough stability to keep running, and then you upgrade as you see fit, this particular distance is going to require you to be on your feet for a longer amount of time. So you're going to want something that can stand up to that time and distance. Please make sure that you go somewhere and get your foot fitted for the correct shoe. Some people will need a stability shoe. Some people can get away with neutral shoes. It's all going to depend on your foot, and the foot is individual to every runner. Please go to a running store and have someone certified take a look at what is going to work best for your foot. Have them analyze your gait, look at your arches, and so on and so forth, because you need something that is going to carry you across the finish line without causing blisters or pain. And second of all, consider the type of terrain you're going to be running. Obviously, if you're running a trail half marathon, that's going to be completely different than if you're running a road half marathon. So that's something else to keep in mind, is that you'll need a completely different type of shoe depending on how you're going to be running. Make sure that you have comfortable socks that will get you through training and through race day. Look for something that is going to be moisture wicking and something that is going to be blister preventing. There are so many different kinds out there, and I have quite a few reviews. If you'll look at some of the unboxings and mail calls that I've done on my channel, then I will give you some ideas of what I have been using. Ask around, ask your running friends, ask anybody that is working at a running store what they recommend. There's so many different types out there, and it's all about what's going to work best for you. As far as clothes go, you're going to want something that is in a technical fabric that is made to whisk away moisture. Try and stay away from any type of cotton fabric, as those tend to absorb a lot of moisture and then get heavy and can cause a lot of chafing. Use anything that is going to be moisture wicking, that carries moisture away from your skin and allows it to evaporate. It will allow the material to breathe and let your skin get plenty of air. There's going to be lots of different options out there, from cheap to expensive. There's plenty out there to fit any type of person in any budget. If you're going to be racing in the fall or winter, make sure that you're looking at different layers that you can wear and possibly discard. I know a lot of people that will buy very cheap layers of clothing, sweatshirts and $1 gloves and so on, and they will just toss them by the side of the road on race day as they discard them. Most races will go along and collect those and donate them to charity for you. Now, we've talked a lot on this channel before about fuel and hydration for your races. In fact, I have a video where I talk about some of the fuels that I use. I have a couple of videos where I talk about different hydration strategies. And if you look at the videos that I put out on preparing for the 5K and the 10K, I talk a lot about fuel and hydration there as well. So there's going to be even more information, but let's talk a little bit about how to approach it for a half marathon. Overall, what you need to know is that you need simple carbs that can refuel you, and that you should always test these before race day. Take them out on your training runs and see what works. As I've mentioned in videos before, there are so many options out there, from real food to gels to chews to powders to sports drinks. There's so much that's out there. In fact, I'm going to put a link to a video right up here and down in the description to a new Runner 101 video, which is another series you should consider watching if this is your first time racing. But I talk a little bit about how to fuel a long run. I've got tons of information there that can fill you in. The basic thing that you need to know for a half marathon, though, is that you need to stick to simple carbs. Try and stay away from heavy proteins and fats. Look for things that are going to be light and easy to carry, and definitely things that you have tested before race day. Looking at hydration, before you start running, you should have at least 6 to 8 ounces of hydration in your stomach. Whatever that means for you, it could be water, it could be coffee, it could be sports drink. You should probably start drinking at least 30 minutes before the start of your race. Otherwise, once that starting gun goes off, you may have to make a quick run to the porta potty before you can continue on your race. Most sports nutritionists will suggest that you take in between 3 to 6 ounces of water about every 20 minutes as you are racing. Again, this is going to vary from person to person. I know people that can go for longer than that. I know people who are constantly sipping water or sports drink as they go along. So again, whatever you practice in your long runs, you need to take that strategy into race day. If you are going to be out running longer than 1 hour, and if you are running a half marathon, then you will most definitely be out longer than 1 hour. You need to start looking at fluids that can replenish carbs and electrolytes. So things such as Powerade, Gatorade, Tailwind is one of my all-time favorites, Liquid IV. There's lots of different drinks out there that can replenish calories and carbs and electrolytes and keep you going and keep you fueled, because as you tend to exercise more, the longer you exercise, the more you're going to sweat and the more your body is going to lose electrolytes. As your body loses those electrolytes through sweat, especially if you are a salty sweater, then you are going to start losing energy and your body will become dehydrated more easily. So make sure that you are replacing those electrolytes through sodium of some kind, and make sure that you are taking in enough calories to compensate for what you are losing while you are running. So this brings us to race day. You've finally finished that training program. You've managed to get to the start line injury-free. You've done your cross training, your long runs, your drills, and you have practiced your hydration and fueling strategies. So what do you need to know next? As I mentioned before, try to stop drinking liquids at least 30 minutes before the start of your race. Make sure that you get to the race in plenty of time to park and get to the start line and visit the porta potty before the race starts. Keep in mind that on this day, you're going to be practicing what you did in your longest runs. And that goes for your hydration, your fuel, and your pacing. Make sure that you don't overdo it. I know it's exciting to hit that start line, but once that starting gun goes off, don't go crazy. Try and keep it reined in. Remember, we're trying to save some gas in the tank for the end of the race to make sure that you don't completely hit the wall before 13.1. Keep in mind that it can be a bit overwhelming to conquer that distance, and there will be some times when you'll feel like quitting. That is totally normal. Every runner goes through that, where you just think, I just don't want to do this anymore. Don't quit. I promise you can get to that finish line one way or another. It may not be as fast as you wanted it to be, it may not be the way that you wanted it to go, but you're going to get to that finish line and you will feel so accomplished. Just remember that you're out there to have fun. You're out there to conquer that distance. And yes, I promise you can do it. So what other questions do you have about the half marathon? Why don't you let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you have run a half marathon before and you would have any advice that you would like to add, then please let us know. This is your second reminder that if you're not subscribed to this channel, to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of the running content that I have coming out all the time. You can also follow me on social media. All the links are down in the description. You can find me across all platforms under the name Running Geek Girl. Thank you so much for being here. I'm proud of you already, and I can't wait to see you next time. Happy running. As I mentioned before, try to stop drinking.